Part 1. The crystal towers of Velra Prime glowed softly in the light of their twin suns. High Counselor Thren stood in the observation chamber, watching as another transport ship lifted off carrying refugees. His transparent skin flickered with worry as he counted the vessels. Not enough. There would never be enough. The Kresh had arrived 3 months ago. At first, the Velran scientists thought they were simply a migration pattern, a swarm of space-dwelling creatures passing through their territory. They were wrong. The Kresh were not passing through. They were feeding. The first colony world fell in 2 weeks. The Velran sent diplomats trying to communicate, to negotiate, to understand. The Kresh responded by consuming the diplomatic vessel and everyone on it. They moved from planet to planet like a plague, their organic ships multiplying with each world they destroyed. Counselor Vera entered the chamber, her form dim with exhaustion. She had been coordinating evacuations for 72 hours without rest. The Velrans did not need sleep like some species, but even they had limits. The outer rim is lost, she reported. 15 worlds have gone silent. The defense fleet attempted to hold at Kelmar Station. They lasted 4 hours. Thren felt his internal light dim further. The Velran fleet had been built for exploration and research, not war. Their ships were beautiful works of art, designed to glide through space with minimal disruption to the cosmic environment. Against the Kresh, they were as fragile as flower petals. How long until they reached the homeworld? He asked, though he already knew the answer. 2 days. Perhaps 3 if we're fortunate. Thren turned to face the council chamber where the other members waited. They had been arguing for hours about their options. Some wanted to surrender, though no one knew if the Kresh even understood the concept. Others proposed fleeing deeper into the galaxy, abandoning their home to save what population they could. "We must send the galactic distress call," Thren announced as he entered the chamber. The room fell silent. "The ancient protocol?" Elder Shen asked. "That has not been used in over 1,000 years. Because it has never been needed," Thren replied. "But we need it now. We will broadcast on every frequency known to our people. We will ask for help from anyone who can provide it." "And if no one answers?" Vera asked quietly. "Then at least we will have tried." The vote was unanimous. Within the hour, technicians activated the ancient communications array, a device so old that most Velrans had thought it was merely decorative. The message went out in waves, spreading across the galaxy at faster than light speeds. "This is High Counselor Thren of the Velran Republic. Our civilization faces extinction from an enemy we cannot defeat. We request aid from any species capable of providing it. We are a peaceful people. We have never made war. We do not know how to fight. Please, if anyone can hear this, help us." The message repeated on loop, broadcasting continuously into the void. Thren stood in the communications center, watching the displays as the signal propagated outward. It would reach the nearby civilizations first, then spread to more distant systems. Responses began arriving within hours. The Corian collective sent their sympathies but explained they had no military vessels. The methane breathers of Titan 6 offered to accept refugees but had no way to transport them. The silicon mines calculated that intervention would be inefficient and declined. One by one, the responses came back. Condolences, regrets, apologies. No one was sending help. Thren felt something he had never experienced before. Despair. His people had lived for 3,000 years in peace, creating art and philosophy, exploring the wonders of the galaxy, and now they would end, consumed by creatures that could not even appreciate what they were destroying. "Counselor," a young technician called out, "we're receiving a response from the outer rim, from a system we've been monitoring for decades." "Which system?" Thren asked. "The humans. From Earth." Thren moved to the display. Humanity, the violent species from the Deathworld. The Velrans had been observing Earth for 70 years, watching from a safe distance. Everything about that planet terrified them. The crushing gravity that would shatter a Velran's delicate structure, the violent weather patterns, the aggressive predators, and the humans themselves who had clawed their way to dominance through countless wars and conflicts. "What do they say?" Thren asked. The technician looked up, her lights flickering with confusion. "They say they're coming. All of them." Far from Velra Prime on a small moon orbiting Neptune, Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison stared at his displays in disbelief. He had been monitoring deep space communications for 3 years and had never seen anything like this. The message was broadcasting on frequencies that Earth ships didn't even use, in languages that required the computer several minutes to translate. He immediately contacted his superior officer, who contacted her superior, and within 30 minutes the message was being reviewed by Admiral Patricia Holland in the Lunar Command Center. Holland read the translation 3 times, her experienced eyes catching details that others might miss. The Velrans were dying. An enemy they called the Kresh was exterminating them. They had asked the galaxy for help and been refused. She pulled up Earth's files on the Velran Republic. They were a peaceful species, advanced in many ways but completely unprepared for war. Their observation probes had been watching Earth for decades, always from a safe distance, never making direct contact. "Get me the Defense Council," Holland ordered. Priority 1. "We need to mobilize." The council meeting lasted 2 hours. There were questions about resources, about whether Earth should interfere in galactic affairs, about the risks of revealing their military capabilities. Holland listened to them all, then stood and spoke. "The Velrans asked for help. They're dying. We have the ability to save them. That's all that matters." General Carlos Mendoza leaned forward. "You're talking about deploying the fleet." "The entire fleet." "Yes," Holland confirmed. "Every ship we have." The room erupted in discussion. Earth's military fleet had been built in secret over 50 years, constructed in hidden shipyards among the asteroids and the outer moons. They had watched the galaxy and learned that other species built ships for exploration and trade. Earth built ships for war. It had been a conscious decision, made after humanity achieved faster-than-light travel and began exploring nearby systems. They found civilizations that had never known real conflict, species that evolved on worlds so gentle that they never developed the survival instincts that humans took for granted. Earth's military strategists realized that humanity might be unique. They came from a world that had tried to kill them for millions of years. They had survived ice ages, supervolcano eruptions, asteroid impacts, and countless predators. They knew how to fight because they had never stopped fighting. So they built weapons, ships with armor thick enough to withstand nuclear blasts, railguns that could punch through asteroids, missile systems that could saturate an entire region of space with firepower, and they kept it all hidden, waiting for the day they might need it. That day had arrived. "How long to mobilize the fleet?" Ambassador Lisa Chen asked. 48 hours, Holland replied. "We can have 600 warships ready to deploy." The vote was called. The decision was unanimous. Earth would answer the Velran distress call. In orbit around Mars, crews began activating ships that had been in standby mode. In the asteroid belt, automated factories shifted into high gear, producing ammunition and supplies. On Earth itself, military personnel received recall notices, and within hours they were boarding transports to the orbital stations. Captain Raymond Cole received his orders while having breakfast with his family. He kissed his wife and children goodbye, promised he would return, and took a shuttle to the Valkyrie. His ship. 3 kilometers of armored death waiting in the Mars orbital yards. As he boarded, crew members saluted. They knew what was coming. They had trained for this. Every simulation, every drill, every exercise had been preparing them for war. Now they would find out if their training was enough. Commander Lisa Grant met him on the bridge. "All stations report ready, Captain. We're receiving similar confirmations from the rest of First Fleet." Cole looked at the tactical display showing 200 warships in formation. "Status on 2nd and 3rd Fleets?" "2nd Fleet is mobilizing around Jupiter. 3rd Fleet is departing from Saturn space. Total deployment 600 ships, 40,000 crew." Cole nodded slowly. Humanity was going to war, not for territory or resources, but because someone had asked for help and they had the power to give it. "Prepare for departure," he ordered. "Set course for Velran space. Maximum speed." Part 2. The jump to faster-than-light speed felt like falling through ice water. Captain Raymond Cole had made the transition thousands of times in simulations, but this was his first real deployment. The Valkyrie shuddered as it tore a hole through normal space, and suddenly they were traveling faster than physics should allow. Around them, the rest of First Fleet made the same transition. 200 warships moving in perfect formation, heading toward a species they had only observed from a distance. Cole stood on the bridge watching the display screens that showed the swirling colors of FTL travel. "Time to Velran space?" he asked. Lieutenant Kevin Murphy checked his navigation console. 46 hours at current speed, sir. We're pushing the engines harder than recommended, but they're holding. Good. Communications, any word from 2nd or 3rd Fleet? 2nd Fleet departed Jupiter orbit 30 minutes ago. 3rd Fleet is still loading supplies but should launch within the hour. Cole nodded. 600 ships, the largest military deployment in human history. And they were doing it for aliens they had never spoken to. Commander Lisa Grant approached from the tactical station. She was younger than Cole, but she had top scores in every combat simulation the military offered. Her dark hair was pulled back in a regulation bun, and her eyes constantly scanned the displays, looking for potential threats. Captain, I've been reviewing the crash data from the Velran transmissions, she said. These things are unlike anything in our tactical database. Explain. Grant pulled up a holographic image. It showed a crash ship, if you could call it that. The vessel looked organic, like something grown rather than built. It pulsed with bioluminescent lights and tendrils extended from its hull like the arms of a squid. They're biological ships, Grant continued. They grow them. Each vessel is alive in some sense. They feed on organic matter and use it to replicate. The Velrans estimate that the Kresh fleet has grown by 40% since they entered Velran territory. So killing them actually reduces their numbers, Cole observed. They can't just build more ships. They have to grow them. Exactly. But there's a problem. Our weapons are designed to fight metal ships with engines and reactors. We don't know how these organic vessels will respond to railgun impacts or missile strikes. Cole considered this. We'll find out soon enough. Have all ships run additional simulations based on the Kresh data. I want crews ready for anything. Down in the pilot ready room, Lieutenant Sophie Barnes sat with her squadron reviewing flight patterns. She was one of 200 fighter pilots in First Fleet, trained to fly the small, agile interceptors that launched from the carrier ships. Listen up, Commander Alan Price said, addressing the assembled pilots. We're heading into unknown territory against an unknown enemy. The Kresh don't use conventional tactics. They swarm. They overwhelm through numbers. Our job is to break up those swarms before they can concentrate their forces. Sophie had been flying since she was 16, first in atmospheric craft on Earth, then in the orbital training stations. She knew her interceptor like she knew her own body. Every control, every system, every capability was hardwired into her reflexes. How many Kresh are we expecting? Asked Lieutenant Greg Palmer, one of the newer pilots. Current estimates put their fleet at around 1,000 ships, Price replied. That's almost 2-to-1 odds against us. The room fell silent. Sophie felt her heart rate increase slightly, but her hands remained steady. 2-to-1 odds. In any normal military engagement, those would be terrible numbers. But humans didn't train for normal military engagements. Remember your training, Price continued. We're faster than they are. We're smarter than they are. And we're meaner than they are. We come from a planet that spent millions of years trying to kill us. These bugs are about to learn what that means. The pilots dispersed to their quarters. Sophie found her bunk and lay down, trying to rest before the battle. Sleep came in fits and starts, her mind running through combat scenarios and flight patterns. On the Velran homeworld, High Counselor Thren watched the approaching Kresh fleet with growing dread. They had less than a day before the swarm arrived. The evacuation ships had saved maybe 10% of the population. The rest would have to shelter in the deep underground caverns and hope the Kresh didn't dig that deep. Any response from the humans? He asked Counselor Vera. They confirmed they received our distress call. They said they were coming. That was 18 hours ago. Thren's lights flickered with uncertainty, and they gave no indication of how many ships or when they would arrive. None. Just that they were coming. The Velran defense fleet, what remained of it, had pulled back to orbit around the homeworld. 50 ships designed for scientific research and peaceful exploration, now serving as the final line of defense. Their commanders knew it was hopeless, but they would try anyway. Commander Celis stood on the bridge of the survey vessel Bright Hope, watching the Kresh approach on long-range sensors. His ship had been studying nebula formations just 2 months ago. Now it was armed with mining lasers and particle beams meant for clearing debris, preparing to fight creatures that had consumed entire worlds. All ships, maintain defensive formation, he transmitted to the fleet. Make them pay for every meter they advance. The Kresh fleet moved like a living thing, the individual ships pulsing in rhythm as they approached. Celis could see smaller vessels spawning from the larger ones, the swarm growing even as he watched. Weapons range in 10 minutes, his tactical officer reported. Celis took a deep breath, filling his respiratory sacs with the ship's atmosphere. Prepare to fire on my command. Then every sensor on his ship went insane. Multiple FTL signatures, the tactical officer shouted. Massive energy readings. Ships are appearing at the system's edge. The Kresh have reinforcements? Celis asked, though his hearts already knew the answer. No, Commander. These signatures are different. The energy output is enormous. They're transmitting identification codes. They claim to be human vessels. Celis pulled up the sensor data and felt his lights brighten with hope. Ships were appearing, hundreds of them, emerging from FTL in perfect formation, but these were not like any ships he had ever seen. They were weapons. Pure and simple. No beautiful curves or artistic designs. Just brutal, functional shapes built for one purpose, to destroy. The largest vessel was 3 kilometers of armored hull, bristling with weapon systems. Railgun turrets lined its flanks. Missile pods studded its surface. Point defense lasers created a web of potential fire arcs. Around it, smaller ships took position. Carriers that launched swarms of tiny fighters. Destroyers that moved with predatory grace. Cruisers with enough firepower to crack a moon. How many? Celis whispered. 200 in the first wave. Sensors are detecting more FTL signatures. Commander, they brought an armada. On the Valkyrie's bridge, Captain Cole studied the tactical display. The Kresh fleet was larger than the initial estimates suggested, closer to 1,200 ships. They were concentrated around the Velran homeworld, preparing for their final assault. Status of the Velran defense fleet? Cole asked. 50 vessels in high orbit, Grant reported. They're armed but not designed for combat. Current projections give them maybe 30 minutes once the Kresh engage. Then we don't have time for introductions. Open a channel to all Velran ships. Tell them to pull back behind our formation immediately. Sir, we haven't established a formation yet. Cole smiled grimly. We will. All ships battle formation Delta. Carriers to the rear, battleships forward. Launch all fighters. Prepare to engage the moment we're in weapons range. The human fleet spread out, each ship moving to its assigned position with mechanical precision. To the Velrans watching, it looked like a school of predators, each one aware of the others, moving as a single deadly organism. Commander Celis received the transmission and immediately ordered his fleet to retreat. The Velran ships pulled back, their slower engines struggling to clear the space between them and the humans. We're receiving another transmission, his communications officer said. The humans want to speak with High Counselor Thren. On the command station, Thren watched the human fleet with a mixture of awe and fear. He had studied Earth's history, knew about their wars and violence. But seeing their warships in person was different. These vessels radiated menace. Put them through, he ordered. A human appeared on the display. He was tall by Velran standards, with dark skin and eyes that held a calm, measured intelligence. He wore a uniform of some kind, dark blue with insignia that Thren didn't recognize. High Counselor Thren, I'm Captain Raymond Cole of the United Human Naval Service. We received your distress call. We're here to help. Thren's lights flickered rapidly, a sign of extreme emotion. Captain Cole, we are grateful for your response. But you must understand what you face. The Kresh have destroyed 15 of our worlds. They cannot be reasoned with. They cannot be stopped. You should take your ships and flee while you still can. Cole's expression didn't change. Counselor, humanity doesn't run from bullies. We end them. Pull your ships back and let us do what we do best. What is that? Thren asked. Hunt. Part 3, the Kresh had no concept of fear. They were driven by hunger, by the biological imperative to consume and replicate. When they detected the new ships entering the system, they simply recalculated their approach. More biomass to consume, more material to convert into new vessels. The swarm shifted, redirecting a portion of their fleet toward the human formation. 300 Kresh ships broke off from the main group, their organic hulls pulsing as they accelerated toward the newcomers. On the Valkyrie, Commander Grant watched the enemy movement. They're sending a screening force. Looks like they want to test us before committing their main fleet, Captain Cole nodded. Then let's give them a lesson they won't forget. All ships weapons free. Engage at maximum range. The order rippled through the fleet. Gun crews that had trained for years in simulation finally got to use their skills in reality. Targeting computers locked onto the approaching Kresh vessels. Safeties were released. Fingers moved to firing controls. The Valkyrie fired first. 8 railgun turrets spoke in sequence. launching tungsten rounds at a significant fraction of light speed. The projectiles crossed the distance in seconds, slamming into the lead crash ships with devastating force. The impacts were catastrophic. Unlike metal ships that might absorb or deflect kinetic strikes, the organic crash vessels simply exploded. The tungsten rounds punched through their hulls, transferring massive amounts of energy that vaporized tissue and ruptured internal structures. 5 crash ships died in the first volley. Target destroyed, Grant reported. Multiple targets destroyed. The railguns are extremely effective against organic matter. All battleships concentrate fire, Cole ordered. Let's thin out their numbers before they get close. Across the human fleet, heavy guns opened up. The space between the two forces became a shooting gallery. Railgun rounds streaked through the void like deadly meteors. Each impact created a brief flash of light as organic matter was instantly converted to plasma. The crash kept coming. They didn't retreat, didn't try to dodge. They just pushed forward, accepting losses that would have broken any conventional military force. For every ship that died, 2 more pressed on. They're not afraid, Grant observed. They're not even trying to evade. They don't know how, Cole replied. They've never faced an enemy that could hurt them like this. Missile batteries prepare to fire. Let's see how they handle high explosives. The battleships launched their missiles in coordinated salvos. Hundreds of autonomous seekers erupted from their launch pods, accelerating toward the crash formation. Each missile carried a fusion warhead capable of vaporizing a small asteroid. The crash point defenses activated. Organic turrets sprayed streams of acidic compounds and bone-like projectiles into space, trying to intercept the incoming missiles. They managed to destroy maybe 30% of the incoming swarm. The rest struck home. Nuclear fire blossomed in the void, each detonation creating a sphere of superheated plasma that consumed everything within its radius. Crash ships simply ceased to exist, vaporized by temperatures that rivaled the core of a star. On the Velrun command station, High Counselor Thren watched in stunned silence. In less than 10 minutes, the humans had destroyed over 100 crash vessels. The creatures that had terrorized his people for months were being slaughtered like animals. This is impossible, Counselor Vera whispered. How can they be so effective? Thren watched as another wave of missiles detonated, wiping out a cluster of crash ships. Because they come from a world that taught them to kill. Look at their weapons. Everything is designed to destroy. They don't have mining lasers repurposed for combat. They have weapons built specifically for war. The crash responded by accelerating their main fleet. The remaining 900 ships abandoned their assault on the Velrun homeworld and turned toward the humans. If they couldn't overwhelm the defenders with a screening force, they would crush them with sheer numbers. Captain Cole saw the shift in tactics immediately. They're committing everything. All carriers, launch fighters, all ships prepare for close engagement. The carrier vessels opened their launch bays and swarms of human interceptors poured out. Small, agile craft piloted by men and women who had trained their entire adult lives for this moment. Lieutenant Sophie Barnes was among them. Her fighter launched from the carrier Providence, accelerating hard as it cleared the bay. Around her, 19 other interceptors formed up in perfect formation. This was Red Squadron, and Commander Alan Price led them from the front. All fighters, this is Price. We're going to hit their left flank. Our job is to break up their formation and create gaps for the capital ships to exploit. Stay tight, watch your wingman, and remember your training. Sophie checked her weapons systems. 2 plasma torpedoes, 4 guided missiles, and a rotary cannon loaded with depleted uranium rounds. More firepower than some Velrun capital ships packed into a craft barely 20 meters long. Red 2, you're with me, Price transmitted. We're going after the big ones. Sophie acknowledged and fell into formation beside her squadron leader. They dove toward the crash fleet, their engines burning hard. The enemy swarm grew larger in her displays, individual ships resolving from the mass. The crash fighters launched from their capital ships, smaller organic vessels that moved with disturbing grace. They looked like flying creatures, all tentacles and bioluminescent organs, and they swarmed toward the human interceptors in waves. Contact, Price called. All fighters engage at will. Sophie's targeting computer locked onto a crash fighter. She fired her cannon, and uranium rounds ripped through space at hypersonic speeds. The crash vessel exploded, its organic hull shredding under the impact. Splash 1, she reported, already lining up her next target. Around her, the dogfight erupted into chaos. Human interceptors weaved through the crash swarm, their superior speed and maneuverability giving them an edge. But the Kresh had numbers and they fought with suicidal aggression. Lieutenant Greg Palmer's fighter took a hit, acid eating through his hull plating. "I'm hit, losing pressure in the port engine. Get back to the carrier," Price ordered. "Red 5, cover his retreat." Sophie watched as Palmer's damaged fighter limped away, another interceptor flying protective formation beside it. Then she was too busy to watch anything. 3 Kresh fighters were converging on her position. She pulled hard on the stick, her fighter rolling through a series of evasive maneuvers that would have killed a pilot from a lighter gravity world. The acceleration forces pressed her into her seat, but her training held. She came out of the roll with a perfect firing solution and launched a missile. The weapon streaked away, its guidance system tracking the nearest Kresh fighter. Impact. The enemy vessel came apart in a spray of organic debris. "Good kill, Barnes," Price transmitted. "Red Squadron, reform on me. We're pushing through to their capital ships." The squadron consolidated, 20 fighters becoming 15 as casualties mounted. They punched through the enemy screen and emerged in the space between the fighter swarms and the Kresh capital ships. "There," Price called, marking a target on their shared tactical display. "Hive ship 3 kilometers long. That thing is spawning the small fighters. We take it out. We slow their reinforcements." The hive ship was enormous, a pulsing mass of organic matter that looked more like a sea creature than a spacecraft. Smaller vessels butted from its hull, growing to full size in minutes before detaching to join the swarm. "All Red Squadron, attack run. Concentrate fire on the spawning organs. Let's kill this thing." They dove toward the hive ship, their interceptors looking like tiny insects attacking a whale. The Kresh point defenses opened up, filling space with biological projectiles and acid sprays. Red 7 took a direct hit and exploded, the pilot dying without time to scream. Sophie gritted her teeth and kept flying. She launched her first plasma torpedo at point-blank range. The weapon burned into the hive ship's hull, detonating deep inside its structure. Around her, the other fighters did the same, pouring fire into the massive target. The hive ship shuddered. Explosions rippled along its length as internal organs ruptured. It began to list, its organic engines failing. "Target damaged," Price called. "All fighters, clear the area. Valkyrie, we've opened it up for you." From his position on the battleship's bridge, Captain Cole watched the fighter strike. "Excellent work, Commander Price. All batteries, target that hive ship. Fire." The Valkyrie's main railgun spoke with the voice of thunder. 8 massive projectiles, each weighing several tons, slammed into the wounded hive ship at relativistic speeds. The impacts were visible from the planet's surface, bright flashes that turned the night sky into day. The hive ship came apart. Its organic structure couldn't withstand that kind of kinetic energy. It broke into chunks that tumbled through space, each piece quickly freezing in the cold void. "Hive ship destroyed," Grant reported. "Enemy fighter production has stopped. All capital ships are engaging effectively." Cole watched the tactical display. The battle was turning in humanity's favor. The Kresh had numbers, but humans had training, discipline, and weapons designed specifically to kill. Every human ship was earning its place in the fleet, systematically reducing the enemy numbers. "Second and third fleets are entering the system," the communications officer reported. Admiral Holland sends her regards and asks, "Part 4, the last Kresh ship died 3 hours after the battle began. A destroyer from 3rd Fleet caught it trying to flee the system and reduced it to debris with a single railgun volley. Then the guns fell silent, and humanity surveyed what they had done. 1,200 Kresh vessels destroyed. The organic ships floated through the system as frozen chunks of biological matter, their internal heat already dissipating into the cold of space. The cleanup crews would spend weeks clearing the debris field. Captain Cole stood on the Valkyrie's bridge reviewing casualty reports. 7 human ships lost, though most of their crews had made it to escape pods before their vessels were destroyed. 43 fighters hadn't returned, their pilots killed in the dogfights with Kresh interceptors. Total casualties, 216 personnel. It was a butcher's bill that would have devastated the Velrans. For humanity, it was acceptable losses. Status of the Velran homeworld? Cole asked. "Stable," Commander Grant reported. "No Kresh vessels made it through to the surface. The planet is secure. We're receiving thousands of transmissions from the surface. They're thanking us," Cole nodded slowly. "Prepare a shuttle. I need to meet with High Counselor Thren face to face. And get me a channel to Admiral Holland." The Admiral's image appeared on the main screen. Behind her, Cole could see the bustling command center on Luna, where officers coordinated the movements of 3 entire fleets. Captain Cole, excellent work. I'm reading your casualty reports. How are your crews holding up? They're good, Admiral. Tired but ready to continue operations. What are your orders? Holland leaned forward, her expression serious. The crash didn't just appear out of nowhere. They came from somewhere, and we need to find out where. I'm authorizing a deep space reconnaissance mission. Take a small task force and track the crash back to their origin point. And when we find it, make sure they never threaten anyone again. The channel closed. Cole turned to Grant. Put together a task force. 20 ships, mix of destroyers and cruisers. We leave in 12 hours. On the Velran command station, High Counselor Thren prepared to meet the humans. He had ordered his finest robes prepared, traditional garments worn for diplomatic occasions. Counselor Vera insisted on accompanying him along with a security detail. Is that wise? Thren asked, gesturing to the guards. We are meeting our saviors, not our enemies. We know very little about humans, Vera replied. They may have saved us, but we should still be cautious. Their capacity for violence is extraordinary. A human shuttle approached the station, requesting permission to dock. Thren granted it immediately, then made his way to the docking bay with his entourage. He wasn't sure what to expect. Everything he knew about humans came from distant observations and historical records that suggested they were aggressive and territorial. The airlock cycled and Captain Cole emerged. He was tall, nearly twice the height of a Velran, with dark skin and a bearing that suggested military discipline. Behind him came 2 other humans, both wearing the same dark blue uniforms. Thren's translator device activated as Cole spoke. High Counselor Thren, thank you for agreeing to meet. I'm Captain Raymond Cole. This is Commander Lisa Grant and Lieutenant Kevin Murphy. Thren's lights flickered in what humans might recognize as a bow. Captain Cole, you and your people have saved our civilization. We are in your debt. Cole shook his head. You don't owe us anything, Counselor. You asked for help, and we were able to provide it. That's what neighbors do. Neighbors? Thren's lights pulsed with confusion. Captain, we have observed your world from a distance for 70 years, but we have never made contact. We are not neighbors. You are now, Cole replied simply. May we speak somewhere private? We have matters to discuss. They moved to a conference chamber. The room had been modified to accommodate both species, with gravity reducers for the Velrans and reinforced furniture for the humans. Thren settled onto a floating cushion while Cole and his officers took seats designed for their heavier builds. Captain, I must confess something, Thren began. We have been watching your species for decades. We know about your wars, your violence, your history of conflict. We were afraid of you. Many Velrans believed that if we ever made contact, you would conquer us. Cole was quiet for a moment. I won't lie to you, Counselor. Humanity has a violent past. We've fought countless wars against each other. We've made terrible mistakes. But we've learned from them. We've learned that strength without compassion is just cruelty. And we've learned that when someone asks for help, you give it. Even if it means risking your own lives, Vera asked. Especially then, Cole replied. Counselor, may I ask you a question? When you sent out that distress call, how many species responded? Thren's lights dimmed with sadness. 47 species received our message. 46 sent sympathies or offered to take refugees. Only 1 sent military aid. And that tells you something important about the galaxy, Cole said. There are a lot of civilizations out there, but most of them evolved on worlds like yours. Gentle worlds. They never had to learn how to fight because they never needed to. Earth is different. Our planet tried to kill us for millions of years. We survived because we learned to be dangerous. And now you use that danger to protect others? Thren asked. That's the idea, Cole confirmed. We're going to track the crash back to their origin point. We need to make sure they don't threaten anyone else. I wanted to inform you before we left. Thren considered this. Captain, the crash could have colonies across the galaxy. You could be embarking on a mission that takes years. Then it takes years, Cole said simply. We don't leave jobs half-finished. The meeting lasted another hour. Thren asked questions about Earth, about human culture, about their military capabilities. Cole answered honestly, holding nothing back. By the end, Thren felt something he hadn't expected. Trust. There is one more thing, Thren said as the meeting concluded. The galaxy needs to know what happened here. For thousands of years, conflicts have been resolved through negotiation and compromise, but the crash proved that sometimes diplomacy is not enough. The other civilizations need to know that there is a species willing to fight for those who cannot fight for themselves. Cole stood, his human height making him tower over the Velrans. Then tell them, Counselor. Tell them that humanity answered your call. And tell them that if they ever need help, they can call us too. The human task force departed 12 hours later. 20 ships, including the Valkyrie, jumped to FTL and began following the trail of Kresh movements. The trail led them deeper into the galaxy, toward the unexplored regions near the galactic core. Lieutenant Sophie Barnes had survived the battle over Velra Prime. Her fighter had taken damage, but she'd made it back to the carrier. Now she sat in the ready room with the other surviving pilots, listening to Commander Price brief them on the new mission. "We're going hunting," Price said. "The Kresh came from somewhere, and we're going to find it. Intelligence suggests they have a central hive structure, probably located in an uninhabited system. Our job is to scout ahead of the main fleet and identify threats." "Sir, what if we find more Kresh?" asked one of the younger pilots. "Then we do what we do best. We fight." The task force traveled for 2 weeks following a trail of destroyed systems and consumed worlds. The Kresh had left a scar across this region of space. Dozens of dead planets stripped of all biological matter. On the Valkyrie's bridge, Commander Grant tracked the pattern. They're moving in a spiral pattern, consuming everything in their path and moving inward toward the core. Based on this trajectory, their origin point should be in the Kelos sector. "What do we know about that region?" Cole asked. "Almost nothing. It's been designated as a dead zone for centuries. No habitable planets, high radiation levels, gravitational anomalies. Most species avoid it. Perfect place to hide," Cole observed. "Take us in. Full tactical alert." The task force entered the Kelos sector cautiously, sensors sweeping for any sign of Kresh activity. They found it 3 days later. A massive biostructure orbiting a dying star, so large it was visible from light years away. "What am I looking at?" Cole asked, staring at the sensor readings. Grant ran the analysis twice before responding. "It's a Kresh hive world, or what's left of one. That structure is consuming the star's energy output, using it to grow new ships. Current estimates suggest it's producing 1 capital ship every 6 hours. How many Kresh are we detecting?" "Millions, sir. This is where they breed. Every ship we destroyed at Velra Prime was born here." Cole studied the tactical display. The biostructure was enormous, larger than most moons. It pulsed with bioluminescent light, and smaller structures orbited around it like satellites. Kresh ships swarmed around it in the millions, a defensive screen that would be impossible to penetrate with conventional tactics. "Options?" Cole asked. "We could call for reinforcements," Grant suggested. "Bring in the full fleet and assault the structure directly. That would take weeks, and in that time this thing will produce hundreds more ships. We need to act now. What about our heavy weapons?" Grant pulled up the inventory. "We have 20 fusion torpedoes per ship, 400 total. Each one has a yield equivalent to a hydrogen bomb." Cole did the math in his head. 400 fusion weapons concentrated on a single target. It might be enough. Part 5. The fusion torpedoes detonated in sequence, each explosion triggering the next in a cascade of nuclear fire. The biostructure, for all its enormous size, could not withstand that concentrated assault. The organic material that made up its hull vaporized instantly, turned to plasma by temperatures that exceeded the surface of the sun. The structure came apart in sections, massive chunks breaking free and tumbling through space. Internal organs ruptured, spilling biological fluids that froze instantly in the void. The smaller satellite structures exploded sympathetically, unable to survive without the main hive's support. On the Valkyrie's bridge, Captain Cole watched the destruction on his displays. The sensor readings were almost overwhelming. Energy output equivalent to a small star going supernova. Radiation levels that would kill an unprotected human in microseconds. And in the center of it all, the death throes of the Kresh homeworld. "All ships jump to FTL immediately," Cole ordered. "Get us out of here before that debris cloud reaches us." The task force jumped, tearing holes in space and fleeing the devastation they had created. They emerged 3 light years away, far enough to be safe from the expanding shockwave. Commander Grant ran the sensor analysis. "The hive structure is completely destroyed. We're detecting massive secondary explosions as internal fuel sources ignite. The Kresh ships that were defending it are scattered and disorganized. Casualties on our side?" "None, sir. All ships made it out safely." Cole allowed himself a moment of relief. They had done it, The Kresh homeworld was gone, destroyed by human weapons and human determination. But he knew the job wasn't finished yet. Long-range scans, he ordered. I want to know if there are any other Kresh concentrations in this sector. The ship spent the next week scanning every system within 50 light-years. They found 3 smaller Kresh colonies, each one containing hundreds of ships. Cole didn't hesitate. Each colony was destroyed with the same concentrated torpedo strikes, wiped from existence before they could threaten anyone. By the end of the second week, the Kelos sector was clear. The Kresh were not extinct, but their numbers had been reduced from millions to maybe thousands, scattered ships fleeing in all directions without the central hive to coordinate them. Cole sent a message to Admiral Holland reporting their success. The response came 12 hours later along with new orders. Captain Cole, outstanding work. You and your task force have eliminated a threat that could have consumed the entire galaxy, given enough time. The Velren Republic has requested a formal meeting with Earth's leadership. They want to establish diplomatic relations and coordinate defensive strategies. You're ordered to return to Velra Prime immediately. The task force made the journey back in 5 days. When they emerged from FTL at the Velren homeworld, Cole was surprised to see how much had changed. The debris field from the battle had been cleared. New orbital stations were under construction. And most surprisingly, there were ships from a dozen different species in orbit, all bearing diplomatic markings. Looks like word got out, Commander Grant observed. Counselor Thren did promise to tell the galaxy what happened, Cole replied. I guess they listened. High Counselor Thren met them at the orbital station, along with representatives from 11 other civilizations. The Velren's lights were bright with excitement as Cole and his officers arrived. Captain Cole, welcome back. Your timing is perfect. We have been discussing the formation of a mutual defense pact, a coalition of civilized species dedicated to protecting each other from threats like the Kresh. Cole looked at the assembled aliens. They represented a wide variety of species, from gas-breathing methane users to silicon-based crystalline beings. But they all had one thing in common. They had evolved on gentle worlds and had no experience with real warfare. With respect, Counselor, how do you plan to defend yourselves? Your ships are designed for exploration, not combat. That is why we need humanity's help, Thren replied. We propose a partnership. The member species will provide resources, technology, and scientific expertise. Earth will provide military training and defensive coordination. You want us to teach you how to fight? We want you to teach us how to survive, Thren corrected. The Kresh proved that there are threats in the galaxy that cannot be negotiated with. We need to be prepared for them. Cole considered this carefully. I'll need to consult with my superiors. This is a decision above my rank. The negotiations took 3 months. Earth's leadership debated the proposal intensely. Some argued that humanity should stay isolated, that getting involved in galactic politics would only lead to trouble. Others insisted that Earth had a moral obligation to help species that couldn't defend themselves. In the end, Admiral Holland made the deciding argument before the Terran Defense Council. We've spent 50 years building a military fleet in secret because we were afraid of what we might find in the galaxy. Well, now we know. We found civilizations that are older, wiser, and more advanced than us in many ways, but they're helpless against predators. We can change that. We can make the galaxy a safer place. Isn't that worth the effort? The vote passed. Earth would join the Mutual Defense Coalition, with the understanding that human forces would have operational independence and final say on military matters. Captain Cole returned to Velra Prime to deliver the news. The orbital station had been expanded, now serving as the coalition's headquarters. Representatives from 23 species filled the central chamber, waiting to hear Earth's decision. Cole stood before them, feeling the weight of history on his shoulders. On behalf of the United Nations of Earth, I am authorized to accept membership in the Galactic Defense Coalition. We will provide military training, defensive coordination, and rapid response forces to any member species that requests assistance. The chamber erupted in what Cole could only describe as alien applause. Each species had their own way of showing approval, from the Velren's pulsing lights to the harmonic resonance of the crystalline beings. Thren approached him after the formal ceremony. This is the beginning of something important, Captain. For the first time in galactic history, we have a unified defense against existential threats. Just remember, Counselor, we're partners in this. Earth isn't going to police the galaxy alone. We'll train your people. but you need to be willing to defend yourselves when necessary. We understand, and we are grateful for your patience with us. Over the following year, human military advisors spread across coalition space. They established training facilities on a dozen worlds, teaching alien crews how to operate defensive weapons and coordinate tactical responses. The transformation was slow but steady. Lieutenant Sophie Barnes found herself assigned to a training squadron, teaching Velran pilots how to fly combat interceptors. It was frustrating work. The Velrans had excellent spatial awareness and quick reflexes, but they struggled with the aggressive mindset required for combat flying. "You're thinking too much about not hurting the enemy," Sophie explained to her student, a young Velran named Kess. "In combat, hesitation gets you killed. When you have a firing solution, you take it. But what if there are survivors?" Kess asked, his lights flickering with concern. "Then you rescue them after the battle. But during the fight, your priority is to stop the threat. Remember, if you don't stop them, they'll kill you and everyone you're trying to protect." It took months, but slowly the concept sank in. The Velrans and other coalition species began to understand that defending yourself wasn't about being cruel or aggressive. It was about survival. They would never be warriors like humans, but they could learn to be defenders. Back on Earth, the Terran Defense Council reviewed casualty reports from the Kresh campaign. 216 dead, along with the resources expended in the battle. Some politicians questioned whether it had been worth the cost. Admiral Holland addressed the criticism directly in a public statement. Those 216 men and women died saving an entire civilization from extinction. They died protecting people they had never met, on worlds they had never visited. They are heroes, and their sacrifice will never be forgotten. The Velrans are alive today because humanity chose to act instead of looking away. I'd make that choice again without hesitation. The statement resonated with the public. Memorial services were held for the fallen, and their families were honored as heroes. The military recruitment offices saw a surge in applications from people inspired by the Velran rescue. Captain Cole was promoted to Commodore and given command of the Coalition Rapid Response Fleet, a mixed force of human warships and Coalition vessels that would deploy to any member world facing attack. It was unprecedented, aliens serving alongside humans in integrated military units. The fleet's first major test came 8 months after the Velran rescue. A species called the Tanith sent out a distress call. Pirates had attacked their merchant convoys, stealing resources and taking hostages. The local security forces were overwhelmed. Cole's fleet arrived within 36 hours. The pirates, expecting easy targets, found themselves facing human destroyers and trained coalition fighters. The battle lasted 20 minutes. The pirates were either destroyed or captured, and the hostages were freed. Word spread quickly across the galaxy. There was a new force in civilized space, one that responded to threats with Part 6. 5 years after the Battle of Velra Prime, the galaxy looked very different. The Galactic Defense Coalition had grown from 23 founding members to over 100 species. Human military advisors operated on 70 worlds, training alien crews and establishing defensive networks. The pirates and raiders that had once preyed on peaceful civilizations now thought twice before attacking. But not everyone welcomed the changes. Commodore Raymond Cole sat in his office, aboard the Coalition flagship Unity, reading intelligence reports that troubled him deeply. The Unity was a new class of vessel, designed jointly by human engineers and Velran scientists. It combined human weapons technology with Velran power systems, creating something more effective than either species could build alone. Commander Lisa Grant entered his office carrying a datapad. She had been promoted to his second-in-command after the Kresh campaign, and Cole trusted her judgment completely. "Sir, we've received another protest from the hegemony," she said, placing the pad on his desk. "They're claiming that the Coalition represents human imperialism and demanding that we withdraw from Coalition space." Cole sighed. The hegemony was a group of older civilizations that had dominated galactic politics for millennia. They were not happy about humanity's growing influence. What are they specifically objecting to this time? They say that by training coalition species in military tactics, we're corrupting peaceful civilizations and encouraging violence. They want the Galactic Council to condemn our actions. And what does the Council say? The Council is divided. Half support us, half think we're too aggressive. But they're not taking any action either way. Cole set down the report. We're not going to change what we're doing. The coalition species asked for our help and we're giving it. If the hegemony has a problem with that, they can take it up with the species we've saved. The hegemony did exactly that. Their diplomats visited coalition worlds, arguing that humanity was taking advantage of vulnerable civilizations. They painted humans as warmongers who would eventually turn their weapons on the very species they claimed to protect. On Velra Prime, High Counselor Thren received a delegation from the hegemony. The lead diplomat was a being called Ambassador Vorel, representing one of the oldest civilizations in the galaxy. Counselor Thren, "We are concerned for your people," Vorel said, his translator rendering his words into Velran language. "You have allowed the humans to establish military bases on your worlds. You have given them influence over your defense policies. This is dangerous." Thren's lights flickered with annoyance. "Ambassador, 5 years ago my people were facing extinction. The Kresh were consuming our worlds, and we sent distress calls to everyone we could reach. Do you remember how the hegemony responded?" Vorel shifted uncomfortably. "The hegemony offered to accept refugees and mediate with the Kresh." "The Kresh cannot be mediated with," Thren replied sharply. "They are a plague that consumes everything. We needed military intervention and only humanity provided it. They saved us. And now they control your military," Vorel countered. "They advise our military." "There is a difference. Every decision about Velran defense is made by Velrans. The humans simply provide expertise and training. For now. But what happens when they decide your gratitude is no longer enough? What happens when they demand payment for their protection?" Thren stood, his full height still shorter than the hegemony diplomat. "Ambassador, I have worked closely with humans for 5 years. I have studied their culture and history. Yes, they are capable of great violence, but they are also capable of great compassion. They risk their lives for strangers. They ask for nothing in return except friendship. Until you can offer us the same protection they provide, the hegemony has no right to criticize our choices." The hegemony's diplomatic offensive failed. Coalition species stood by humanity, defending their partnership and refusing to abandon the defensive networks that had brought them security. But the political tensions created a divide in galactic society between those who embraced the new order and those who clung to the old. And then everything changed when the Devourers arrived. The first warning came from a coalition monitoring station at the edge of explored space. The station's automated sensors detected something massive moving through the void, too large to be a normal fleet. When the station crew investigated, they found something that defied understanding. A structure the size of a small moon, moving under its own power, consuming everything in its path. Unlike the Kresh, which had been biological, this thing was mechanical. Ancient technology from some long-dead civilization, still following its original programming. Consume all matter and convert it to energy. The monitoring station sent out a distress call, then went silent as the Devourer consumed it. Commodore Cole received the alert while the Unity was on patrol near the Tanith homeworld. He reviewed the sensor data 3 times, each reading more troubling than the last. "How big is this thing?" he asked Grant. "Approximately 8,000 kilometers in diameter, mass equivalent to a large moon. Current trajectory has it moving through coalition space toward the core worlds. How long until it reaches inhabited systems? 6 months if it maintains current speed." "But sir, there's something else." "The sensor data suggests this thing has been moving through space for thousands of years. It may have consumed entire civilizations before now." Cole felt a chill run down his spine. "Get me Admiral Holland on Luna, priority channel." The Admiral's image appeared on his screen within minutes. She looked tired, older than Cole remembered. The responsibilities of managing humanity's galactic commitments were taking their toll. "Commodore, I've seen the preliminary reports." "What are we dealing with?" "A threat bigger than the Kresh, Admiral. This thing is ancient, automated and unstoppable by conventional means. If it reaches the Coalition core worlds, millions will die." "Recommendations?" Cole pulled up a tactical display. "We need to evacuate every system in its path and consolidate our forces for a major engagement. This isn't something we can fight with a task force. We need the full fleet." Holland was quiet for a moment. "The hegemony will say this proves they were right, that our military preparations attracted this threat. The hegemony can say whatever they want. Right now, we have a job to do." The coalition mobilized with a speed that would have been impossible 5 years earlier. Human military advisors activated defensive protocols they had spent years establishing. Coalition species evacuated endangered systems, moving billions of civilians to safety. And the combined fleet began assembling at a strategic point along the Devourer's projected path. It was the largest military force ever gathered in galactic history. 300 human warships, 200 coalition vessels that had been upgraded with human weapons, and support craft from a dozen different species. 50,000 crew members representing over 30 different civilizations, all united against a common threat. Captain Sophie Barnes, now a squadron commander, led Red Wing from the carrier Defiance. Her pilots were a mixed group, humans and aliens who had trained together for years. They understood each other's strengths and weaknesses, could communicate with glances and hand signals across species barriers. All squadrons, this is Barnes. We're going to scout the Devourer and identify weak points. Do not engage unless you have clear targets. Our job is intelligence gathering, not heroics. Her wing launched from the carrier and accelerated toward the approaching threat. As they got closer, the sheer scale of the thing became apparent. The Devourer was a sphere of dark metal, pitted and scarred by millennia of travel through space. Enormous collection arms extended from its surface, each one large enough to grab an asteroid and pull it into processing chambers. I'm reading massive energy signatures, reported Lieutenant Kess, the Velren pilot who had been Sophie's first student. The surface is covered in point defense systems. Thousands of them. Any obvious weak points? Sophie asked. Negative. The hull appears to be uniform thickness throughout. Wait, I'm detecting an energy signature near the equator. Some kind of power conduit connecting to the main reactor. Sophie marked the location on her tactical display. Good eye, Kess. All wings pull back. We're taking this data to the Commodore. Back on the Unity, Cole reviewed the scout reports with his senior staff. The Devourer was even more formidable than initial estimates suggested. Its armor was meters thick, designed to withstand impacts from asteroids and cosmic debris. Its point defenses could track and destroy thousands of targets simultaneously. We can't fight this thing with conventional weapons, Grant said. Our railguns will just bounce off that armor. What about fusion torpedoes? Asked Captain Alan Price, who now commanded one of the coalition cruisers. We'd need hundreds of direct hits on the same location to penetrate. And that's assuming the Devourer doesn't have shield systems we haven't detected yet. Cole studied the tactical display, his mind working through possibilities. Then he noticed something in the scout data. What's this energy signature near the equator? Our pilots identified it as a power conduit, Grant replied. It appears to connect surface systems to the main reactor deep inside the structure. So if we damage that conduit, we might be able to cause a cascade failure in the power distribution network. In theory, yes, but getting a torpedo,